The Legend of Zelda is one of the most beloved franchises in video game history, right next to Super Mario Bros., Pokémon and Sonic the Hedgehog. For nearly 40 years, fans have enjoyed playing through the vast world and lore of Hyrule with various incarnations of Link, the mute green-clad hero of Hyrule sworn to protect the kingdom and repel the evil of Ganon. I wanted to do a cursory introduction to the Legend of Zelda timeline for people interested in nostalgic retrospective of Zelda as well as new fans. Please note that this is not an exhaustive timeline and I have not played every single entry of this series. I am simply giving a rough summary of the general lore and game catalog to the best of my knowledge. The series had its original debut in Japan with the original The Legend of Zelda on February 21, 1986. It was later released in North America August 22 of 1987 and in Europe November 27. The Legend of Zelda video games have been developed exclusively for Nintendo consoles and handhelds dating from the original Famicom Family Computer Disk System until the current generation of video game consoles and handhelds such as the Nintendo Switch and 3DS. There have been many spin-offs of this series on non-Nintendo systems such as the Philips CDI. There are currently 29 games in the series, including 4 original titles, ports, remakes and collections. There have been over 52 million copies sold since the release of the original game. There has also been a cartoon, multiple comic book adaptations and various soundtracks. All of that out of the way, first let's try to get the simplest version of the series chronology in order from release date and then lore continuity. The original The Legend of Zelda was released in Japan as the Hyrule Fantasy Zelda no Densetsu. It is set in the fantasy land of Hyrule and centers on the elf-like boy named Link, although the player is free to choose the name of the character themselves. The objective of the first game is to collect the 8 pieces of the fragments of the Triforce of Wisdom in order to rescue Princess Zelda from Ganon, the Prince of Darkness. In this game you control Link from a top-down perspective and navigate through the overworld and multiple dungeons collecting weapons, defeating enemies, solving puzzles and finding secrets along the way. This game was designed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka and it was originally released in Japan as a launch title for the Family Computer Disk System in February of 1986. More than a year later, North America and Europe received releases on the Nintendo Entertainment System in a cartridge format. Being the first home console game to include an internal battery in the United States for saving, this version was later released in Japan in 1994 under the title The Hyrule Fantasy no Densetsu 1. Within the official Zelda chronology, The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System takes place in an era called the Era of Decline. In this era, Hyrule has been reduced to a small kingdom where the residents now live in caves, setting the background for the series. These established characteristics are somewhat similar to the original Super Mario Bros. In that they set up recurring themes throughout the series that will be expanded upon and changed greatly. For example, characters such as Impa, Zelda, Ganon and Link will all become recurring characters in the series. Locations such as the Lost Woods, Death Mountain and Lake Hylia will make an appearance here as well and be expanded upon in future entries. The story of the original Legend of Zelda is described in the instruction booklet and during a short prologue which plays after the title screen. A small kingdom in the land of Hyrule is engulfed by chaos when an army led by Ganon, the Prince of Darkness, invades and steals the Triforce of Power, one part of a magical artifact which alone bestows great strength and power. In an attempt to prevent him from acquiring the Triforce of Wisdom, Princess Zelda splits it into 8 fragments and hides them in secret underground dungeons. Before eventually being kidnapped by Ganon, she commands her nursemaid to find someone courageous enough to save the kingdom. While wandering the land, The old woman is surrounded by Ganon's henchmen when a young boy named Link appears and rescues her. Upon hearing Impa plead, Link resolves to rescue Princess Zelda and return peace to Hyrule. Fragments of the Triforce of Wisdom with which Ganon can then be defeated. During the course of the game, Link locates and braves the 8 underworld labyrinths, and beyond their defeated guardian monsters retrieves a fragment of the Triforce. With each victory once the Triforce of Wisdom is completed, you're able to infiltrate again its hideout and Death Mountain, confront him, destroy him with the Silver Arrow, obtain the Triforce of Power from his ashes, and restore the Triforce of Wisdom. Princess Zelda and peace to Hyrule. Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link is the sequel to the original Legend of Zelda. It is the second installment in the series and was released in Japan for the Famicom Disk System January 14, 1987, less than 1 year after the Japanese release and 7 months before the North American release of the original game. Zelda 2 was released in North America in PAL region for the Nintendo Entertainment System in late 1988, almost 2 years after its initial release in Japan. The Adventure of Link is a direct sequel to the original Zelda game, which is an unusual phenomenon in the Legend of Zelda series. Once again, the protagonist Link is on a quest to save Princess Zelda, who has fallen under a sleeping spell. The game's emphasis this time is on a side-scrolling and role-playing adventure. These elements are a significant departure from the predecessor. For much of the series' 3-decade history, the game technically served as the only sequel to the original game, as all other entries in the series are either prequels or occur in an alternate reality. According to the official Zelda timeline, this changed with the release of Breath of the Wild in 2017 and Tears of the Kingdom in 2023, which serve as the latest chapters to the Zelda continuity. So Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are technically Zelda 3 and 4 after Zelda 2 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. The plot to Zelda 2 is set several years after the events of the original game. The now 16-year-old Link notices a strange mark on the back of his left hand, exactly like the crest of Hyrule. He seeks out Zelda's nursemaid, who takes him to the North Castle, where a door has been magically sealed for generations. Impa places the back of his hand on the door and it opens, revealing a sleeping maiden. Impa tells Link that the maiden is Zelda, not the Zelda from the first game. The Princess of Hyrule from long ago, and the origin of the titular Legend of Zelda. Zelda's brother tried to force her into telling their recently deceased father's secrets concerning the Triforce. Princess Zelda refused to reveal its location, and the prince's wizard friend in anger tried to strike her down with magic. Zelda fell under a powerful sleeping spell, but the wizard was unable to control the wildly arcing spell and was killed by it. The prince, filled with remorse and unable to reverse the spell himself, had her placed in the castle tower, hoping she would one day be awakened. He decreed that all princesses born to the royal family from that point on would be named Zelda in remembrance of this tragedy. Impa says that the mark on Link's hand means he is the hero chosen to awaken Zelda. She gives Link a chest containing 6 crystals and ancient writings that only a great future king of Hyrule can read. Link finds that he can read the document, even though he has never seen the language before. It indicates that the crystals must be set into statues within 6 palaces scattered across Hyrule. This will open the way to the Great Palace, which contains the Triforce of Courage. Only the power of the combined Triforces can awaken Zelda. Taking the crystals, Link sets out to restore them to their palaces. Meanwhile, Ganon's followers seek to kill Link, as sprinkling his blood on Ganon's ashes will revive Ganon. Ultimately, Link restores the crystals to the 6 palaces and enters the Great Palace after. Link restores the crystals to the 6 palaces and enters the Great Palace. After venturing deep inside, Link battles the last of the guardians, a flying creature known as Thunderbirds. Afterwards, his true heart is tested by fighting his own shadow, aka Dark Link. Link then claims to Triforce of Courage and returns to Zelda. The three triangles unite into the Triforce and Link's wish awakens Zelda. Until 2017, this was the end of the decline of Hyrule and the last hero. Of all possible outcomes, Link, the hero of time, faced defeat at the hands of Ganondorf. The thief obtained the three pieces of the Triforce, transformed into the Demon King, Ganon, and continued to threaten the world in future eras. The conflict surrounding the Triforce continued without end, the blood of the gods weakened, and the kingdom of Hyrule shrank to a shadow of its former glory. We hope you have enjoyed this trip down memory lane and will join us for the next game in chronological release order in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo. Thanks for playing and see you next time.
And just when you think your search has ended, you find it's just begun. The new Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Now you're playing with power, superpower.